Hello everyone, this is Thomas Clatterbuck from Springfield Daily. We are in the new studio in the Innovate Springfield Incubator in wonderful downtown Springfield. My guest today is Mr. Bob Daiber. He's one of the many Democratic candidates for governor. Thank you so much for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for governor.
Thank you, Tom. Well, I'm the first Democrat to run for governor from the southern part of the state in 20 years. And I have been a career educator for 38 years. 28 years I spent in the classroom as a career and technical teacher. The last 11 years I've been regional superintendent of schools. This is my 11th year in that position. And I best understand education because of my career, my background as an administrator, dealing with school funding. Having served the entire state of Illinois as president of the regional superintendents from 2010 to 2012 gives me a real working knowledge of the State Board of Education and what goes on in our schools from Chicago to Cairo. Why am I running for governor? Well, the state of Illinois needs to be put on good ground. And I think there's some common things in Illinois. I say there's more unites us than divides us. And the one thing that people in Illinois, they want to be proud to be from the state. They want the state to pay its bills. They want the state to get on solid financial ground. And we want to make this a place where we want our kids to grow up and stay and go to school. And we want to stop the migration of college students that are leaving Illinois. 16,000 chose to go somewhere else last year. These are all the tough issues in the state that the next governor's got to really address. And I think I've got ideas. I think my experience of having worked at all levels of local government, the thing you have to realize about people who are running for governor, who has the qualifications to govern and who's done it and who's developed budgets and who's worked with other people in government and understands the workings of that. And that's what I bring to the campaign and will bring to the office of governor.
All right, well, you mentioned a lot of things. There are a lot of big issues, and you're not the first person to bring up any of them. But we want to give you the floor. What's your number one? What's the first thing on your mind that you really want to talk about?
Well, I really want to talk about paying the excess number of unpaid bills. No matter what anybody says they want to do. I mean, if you want to expand early childhood education, you want to have a single-payer health care system, any of these social programs are great. But when we had $16.5 billion of unpaid bills, we still have over $10 billion of unpaid bills today. This is a serious problem for the state. When you talk about putting more money into education or reinstating social programs, when you got that many dollars of unpaid bills, you're going to have a hard time till you have a plan. Now, I'm the only candidate that is running that has actually laid out a graduated income tax scale. And my graduated scale is pretty realistic how it would work for Illinoisans, because it does what that scale should do. It gives the middle class a tax break, it asks the wealthy to pay more, and it brings in additional revenue. So I've said this, to take care of the problem of the unpaid bills, they got to be bonded out. There's no quick fix, but you bond these out, you reinvest the debt, you bargain for a lower interest rate, you put that into your manageable budget, you pay off so much of the principal over the 4 years that you're in office, you pass a progressive income tax, you bring in more revenue from this, you're able to reestablish the state of Illinois on solid ground, and we can have a better tomorrow. That's what Bob Daiber wants to do.
All right, well, then on that note, I'm actually going to jump ahead a little bit. And recently, the House Pension Committee was shown a proposal for $107 billion bond sale to deal with the pension crisis. Are you familiar with that plan? And
somewhat.
And people are saying that there's a lot of technical issues with that. But is that sort of at least in the wheelhouse of what you would think is acceptable, or is that just too much?
That's too much for me at this date. What I have proposed, and not everyone agrees with this, but I'm exploring three possibilities. Okay, one is to allow annuitants to do something similar to what you're talking about. but actual annuitants to invest in these bonds that makes the system whole. Okay, but we only buy the number of bonds we can sell to annuitants. It may be so much per paycheck that they would reinvest to help make the system whole. That's one idea that I've had. The second idea that I have proposed to make the pension system whole is to look at the individual contribution rate to the system. That maybe to make it whole, it needs to be more. But that will take legislation as well. And the third that I proposed with my graduated tax scale is I said everybody, including retirees, has to pay 1%. So if you're on a state retirement system, or if you're receiving any retirement income that's been tax deferred, you'd pay 1% of that, and that 1% would go to making the pension system whole. We do not want the pension system to crash, but as a forewarner to anybody that's listening and anybody that's in the pension system, when we continue to give a 3% compounded COLA every year to annuitants, and there is when the payout is exceeding what the revenues are coming in, this can only sustain itself for a period of time. I'm one of those investors in the pension system, and I want the pension system to be whole, and I'm willing to pay 1% of my earnings as a pension annuitant.
Thinking of options on the table, there's been a lot of talk about legalizing or decriminalizing recreational marijuana, not just for the medically ill, but for everyone. Is that something that will be on the table for you?
Definitely. I am the one candidate again that came forth and said, I would sign recreational marijuana into law, but there's one big thing that has to happen. The people of the state of Illinois have got to vote on a referendum and say they want this to be legal. And we all have to have ownership into this. And then I'm just not going to make recreational marijuana legal, but I'm going to expand the whole hemp industry in the state of Illinois as an agricultural crop to extract the oil and the fibers and the other products that we can take from hemp. But then we have to, in fact, I had a meeting last week with the two business people that are in the medical marijuana right now that have laid out some various different policies and scales on the recreational marijuana proposal. And, we're looking there at around a 27 to 30% sales tax on that. Now, I mean, those are the proposals that are on the table. But you got to think about how are you going to use that tax revenue? Because, some people believe that this is going to be, the windfall for Illinois, that this is going to solve all of our problems. And I'm not that overly, thinking that it's that overly sound policy that it's really going to do that, because we have many needs and there's many wants that are coming out of this. And part of this is going to have to do with management. Part of it's going to have to do with law enforcement, and what revenue we do have could better aid our universities, could better aid our social programs. But we have to see realistically. The medical marijuana legalization was a real shortfall from the initial projection. It's only bringing in about 1/4 of what it was projected to. I think we're bringing about $100 million this year.
Not nothing, but not.
That's right, but it's substantial revenue, but it's not $400 million.
For sure. But again, on the other side of the drug question, we have an opioid epidemic. So on the one hand, we have marijuana that's going up, but we're also trying to combat opioids. Do those two things seem at odds with each other, or is there some way to sort of harmonize those two sort of oppositional drug policies?
Well, this is where the controversy comes in, and it's controversy for me personally. I've been in schools. I run a regional safe school in which I have students attending there that have been expelled from their public high school for marijuana possession. So I've been about free, drug-free schools my entire career. I serve on a heroin task force as an elected official in Madison County. There are proponents of recreational marijuana that say it is not the gateway drug to heroin. Okay, there are those that say any drug is a gateway because of experimentation, and so that's a debatable issue. The issue I think that's at stake is that heroin has some severe consequences that we have to treat because of its addiction. And we none want our children to die. And once you become addicted to heroin, it takes real treatment. If you smoke marijuana, it's a habit maybe. You don't have to go through an addiction process to get clean from it. And I also administer a drug rehab school with Chestnut Health Services. So I've seen young people who have drug addictions and how we deal with those, and it's very difficult.
Now, transitioning then to your education work, can you explore a little more about that? Because you said you've been a classroom teacher and up to the almost highest levels of school administration. So if you just want to explore your role there and sort of what you've learned.
Sure. Well, I recently have just laid out a plan for improving instruction in the state of Illinois. It's always been my first and foremost mission to try to help as many kids that can be successful in school as possible. But we have schools in Illinois today that are not graduating 70% of their students. And as governor, that's where my interest really goes. It goes in how do we help all kids attain the success to go on and be productive members in society. So I have served on the Illinois Community College Alternative Credentialing Council, and I've made some proposals there. Dropped out, but I want to get to the meat of the thing here. We have to improve our schools where we have at-risk youth. And at-risk youth typically come from lower income levels, poverty, homelessness, and these are not just inner city schools, but these are rural. There's rural poverty in the state as well. In those schools, we need to assist with developmental reading. Reading is the basic number one skill that we have to be able to accomplish if a child's going to be successful through the rest of their years. And if they're behind in reading by the 3rd grade, there's great probability that they're going to be behind in the 5th grade and in the 6th grade and in the 7th grade. And what happens is by 10th grade, they are so far behind, they don't see any hope for the future, and they drop out of school because they're failing, they're doing poor. Their life also becomes demanding for them to survive because they're physically big enough, and so adults are putting pressure on them to get money into the household. Some of them do it by the wrong avenue. They sell drugs. They get involved in illicit activity. I deal with these kids. I've dealt with them for 38 years. So this is what I've proposed as governor. We institute reading specialists at early elementary. We have subject matter coaches that help at-risk youth and intermediate grades. We initiate a mentoring program for 6 through 12, and I've done this. The program's called Give 30. Listeners could Google this at give30.net and learn more about it. But we take individuals from the community. They are from corporations that volunteer. I have mentors from banks. I have mentors from major petroleum companies. I have mentors from small business. I have retired teachers that are mentors. But they mentor at-risk youth. They give them a support system to help them with their homework, their social issues, personal concerns they have, help boost their personal esteem, and tell them they can be successful. Mentoring is so important. It also helps draw the line in the sand on what is right and what is wrong, and do not get involved in violent activities. Don't get involved in drugs. We were just talking about the opioid epidemic. Making crucial decisions where they may not have an adult in their life that they can have these conversations to. And the fourth thing that we really need to do, and this is not because I was a career and technical teacher, but we have to expand our subject matter options in career and technical education for middle school and high school kids that are not college bound. And some kids that think they're college bound are going down a pathway that they're not going to succeed at. And so the more kids that are introduced to a technical program, the greater options that they may have in pursuing their college education at a community college to go out and get a good paying job. So as governor, those are my 4 real key initiatives. that we do to improve education and improve graduation in the state of Illinois?
No, that's a good point. I have more education questions, but we're going to take a short commercial break. All right, we're back. I'm here in the Springfield Daily studio. My guest today is Bob Daiber. He's one of the Democrats running for governor, and he was just talking about his lifelong work as an educator in the state of Illinois. And so I wanted to lead into some of the major education bills that have passed in this last year. There have been a lot. There's a new funding formula and a new scholarship program, the Invest in Kids Act, which took tax credits to pay for private school scholarships. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on some of those fairly important steps forward in the education world in the state of Illinois.
Sure. Well, I support the evidence-based funding formula. I think there's some work that needs to be done with it. That's why no school district has received a payment from it yet this year. So it was a great concept model, but I think there's some amendments, and I think some of that may happen in spring session to make that funding formula more workable. I think it had good intentions because it was to help those school districts with low EAVs and try to provide an equal quality funded education for all students in the state. In regards to the tuition tax credit legislation, I would end that. I do not believe in public dollars going to private schools. I just don't support that, and I think that as governor, you have to have a clear division in your policy. And I believe, and I've said this, that it was an open door to begin a voucher program in the state of Illinois, which I've opposed my entire career. If we are going to build a strong public school system in the state, that is not the way we need to go about it. And the way we go about it is truly investing in education and making it our first appropriation as a state.
And you talked before the break about the importance of adding various vocational and technical and really opportunities that match the needs of the students. To that end, how do you feel about funding gifted education, not just for the students at the bottom of the tiers, which obviously need all the support they can get, but also for those students at the top who often don't feel challenged or don't have opportunities to really make the best use of their talents?
Well, I've been one of the national proponents of STEM education. And, we're in the 21st century. Different educational terms have been used at different periods of education, and I think gifted was one of those terms. I believe every child is gifted. And I think our educational program should be looked at as challenging. And we should have challenging opportunities for students and educational intellect building types of activities that engage students, and that's what STEM does. And for that reason, that's why I'm such a strong advocate for it. Many of our programs that were gifted and are great as well, but I think the terminology here, as we look at this, we have today in our schools advanced placement programs, we have running start programs, we have all types of programs that challenge kids. But yes, I am for putting money forth to enhancing higher level 21st century skill programs in the state.
All right, I want to take a slightly different tact. You're from downstate area, and you're one of the first Democrats to run for governor from this. What perspective does that add to a party that's often seen as being the metro area, the Chicagoland area?
Well, I think it says that you can be a downstater and be a solid Democrat, and I don't believe that Democrats are just from Chicago. They are from the entire state, and Democrats, the basis is that we're for working class people. That's the core of the Democratic Party. It was the Democratic Party that I grew up in, that you supported middle class values, that you were concerned about the benefits of workers, and that you supported unions. The unions have been at the core of the Democratic Party, and that's why I signed a pledge and I said no to right to work for less. I'm the only candidate that's done that. I'm the only candidate that talks about the importance of paying union dues. And whether you're in Chicago and you're in a labor union in Chicago, or you're here in Sangamon County and you're a member of the Teamsters or any other union here, dues are so important. And being part of a union has been the center of the Democratic Party, and we shouldn't forget that. But there's another dimension that I want to just talk about, being a downstater and being a Democrat, is that the Democratic Party can be inclusive of individuals who may own guns. There are people that think if you're a gun owner, you definitely can't be a Democrat because they're for confiscating your guns. That's false. Okay. In fact, the sponsors of the concealed carry bill were Gary Forby and Brandon Phelps from Southern Illinois. So, these are key differences that some people look at who is a Democrat and who is not. But I think there's a profound statement made when an individual from downstate runs as a Democrat and then is presented to an audience, such as in Chicago, that this guy's got progressive ideas. It's easy to be a progressive from Evanston. It's not easy being a progressive in the Metro East. And the guy who's had the most progressive ideas has been me. And the guy that's been able to lay out the most policy and real substance, not just sound bites, but substance. And that's what I tell viewers and listeners all the time. Look at the substance as to who is got the ability to solve the problems that the state is facing, and not just tell you what pie in the sky is.
No, for sure. I mean, that sort of preempted one of my questions of what is your X factor. I mean, you're in a really crowded field. There's 8 people?
Oh, there's 6 that are on the ballot.
So I mean, it's a really crowded field, and is being just the most prepared your X factor?
Yes. Well, it's how I've competed. I have political skills beyond writing checks. I have political skills to govern, and I say this all the time, is that you don't wake up one day and become a good governor. It's a skill. It's an art. Learning to govern is an art, and that art deals with how you collaborate and how you compromise and how you get along with people, how you present your ideas that's sellable. A governor that is not marketable doesn't have a long lifespan. And I mean, there is hype, and I think we see that in the governor today. I mean, I think that he didn't have good governing skills, or he would have had a budget for 2 years. And so you've got to understand how government works. You have to understand how you're going to get along with people to move your policies through. Because a governor who cannot promote policy isn't governing.
No. Can I get a time check? Before I lead into my last prepared question, is there anything else that I've missed? Anything that you want to say? Any of your policies? Any subject area that I haven't given you a chance?
Sure. I want to talk a little bit about agribusiness.
All right.
It's our biggest business in the state, and I want to talk a little bit about business growth and development, because a lot of people talk about that run for office that they're going to bring business to the state of Illinois. There's a lot of business here. There's a lot of business thriving. There's some areas of the state that are economically deprived. I've worked in business growth and development in a region, and I've done it as a local elected official at the city level, the township level, and at the county level. And in southwestern Illinois, we've seen business really grow in a lot of ways. One of the best things we can do to really grow business in this state is to attract more residents to move here. And we have to have a marketing plan in this state, because we don't have one. The marketing plan is not that Illinois is bad. It's not that don't move here because we got high property taxes. We have bad workers' comp laws. We have to market this state for its good, and that's why I want to talk about agribusiness. There's nowhere in the Midwest that's got any better agricultural base for marketing their products than right here in Illinois, because of the abundance that we grew. And so we have to be self-conscious that we keep agribusiness strong and that it continues to flourish. and that what we do as a state supports the infrastructure for it. And as governor, I'm self-conscious of that, and that's what I will do. I also came out 2 weeks ago, and I said, as governor, I would issue a pesticide ban on dicamba, and it's a herbicide for soybeans because I have environmental concerns about it.
All right, and that sounds pretty technical, but I'm actually very intrigued. Can you say more about that?
Sure. Well, dicamba was a new seed system that was released last year by a couple of different companies, went on the market. 246 of the 300 some odd claims, or the 400 some odd claims that were filed last year, over 50% of them were from this pesticide. I have real concerns about, and so do some custom applicators as well as some producers, about the extending use of this because of greater damage that it may spread throughout Illinois. Arkansas did a restricted ban on it, as did Missouri. And if these two states who first had it on the market saw its ills, we're a much bigger agricultural state than either of those. I have real concerns about its widespread use in Illinois for the protection of all citizens in all communities, and protection of farmers, that they don't wind up in litigation with it.
No, I mean, that's the sort of technical thing that we like to hear, to say this is where it's protecting business, but it's also not something we sort of want to talk about. That
right.
There are some risks.
Yeah, high risk.
And so I guess my last question for you is, primaries, when your primary is on March 20th, often have very, very low turnout.
Right.
Not what would you say to your base, but what would you say to a moderate or to an independent who's maybe not thinking about voting, or maybe not thinking about pulling that Democrat ballot? What would you say to them?
If you want to change Illinois, you've got to change the leadership, and you got a true choice here in this primary. You need to go out and vote if you really want to change it, and you need to elect Bob Daiber to be your next governor, because this state has 102 counties. And the other 5 candidates are all from Cook County. I'm the only candidate outside of Cook County, and the only candidate from Southern Illinois that has had the courage to do this in 20 years. So if you want to change the business in Springfield, we have to change leadership, and I would encourage them to join me in making history of electing a governor from truly Southern Illinois that I think will unite the state and bring about real change for the good of all people.
All right, well, thank you so much for being here. This is Mr. Bob Daiber, running for the Democratic
Thank you, Tom.
primary.
You bet.